Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet B Rayne. My guest today is, how do you pronounce your first name? Because it's beautiful.
Perdita.
Perdita Finn. She is the author of Take Back the Magic, Conversations with the Unseen World, Mothers of Magic, Summoning the Wisdom of Our Ancestors. With her husband, Clark Strand, she is the founder of the Way of the Rose Fellowship and the co-author of the book of the same name, The Way of the Rose. I talk about it a lot at our center and actually sell it in our store, and we're having a retreat in September and everybody's getting one of the books. So I'm a fan.
Aren't you a fairy godmother in my life?
I'm a fan. Well, I have a mystery school. And one of our classes, we create a rosary. And most people are like, oh, that's Catholic. And I'm like, oh, beads, malas, all that goes back so far. Right? People that are listening, please don't take this the wrong way. We're in this space today where we think this is just ours. We're the only one that teaches this. This is all. And I hate to tell you, we all came from the same place. We all go back from the same place. And if anybody is the copyright person of all these things, it's God, the divine, whatever you believe in, because it is weaved through our cultures, our traditions, all these things go so far back. And we think it only belongs to this group. I hate to tell you, it is threaded through everything, through our history and years through our ancestors. It's not anything new. You didn't create it. You might have rebirthed it and it's come forward, right?
Well, that's why I wanted to write about the mothers, because we all have mothers, we all have grandmothers, we all have, we all have those people in our lives, and how they can, my own mother, she professed no belief in God, right? She was a modern American materialist. And I once got into a fight with her in college about, this, my spiritual yearning, and, didn't she ever have, a experience of the divine? And, oh my gosh, she got so angry at me and was putting me down. I don't want to believe in anything. And I realize in retrospect, if I had said to her, do you believe your mother is still there looking out for you? She would have said yes. And I said, I know that when you die, you'll still be there looking out for me. And if I said, I will always believe in you, suddenly our conversation might have been really, really different, and less about the names of these divinities or this theology or that theology. And maybe we could have talked heart to heart. And so this book I wrote was really about how we can begin to talk to each other heart to heart.
I love that because they're always there with us. They're always walking with us. And just as when we got on here, our world completely changes all the time. It's nothing new that our world changes and what our focus is and what we're doing and all that. But it comes through lots of history of how it's woven and how we carry it forward, different pieces of it, and don't even realize that we're carrying.
That's what I always say. Nature loves change. Nature is really creative. It's always figuring out, how can I make a different kind of flower, or a different kind of beetle, or a different kind of whatever, a cloud. And as human beings, we kind of like things to stay the same, right? We want predictability and routine, and when things are changing so fast around us, but I think the one continuity, the one thing that doesn't change, is love. And that's what we can hold on to, right?
Right. And our connection. We came here to connect,
Uh, exactly.
right?
Exactly. Not to let go, but to connect and to hold on to each other.
Yeah, to connect and to understand that we are all connected. We are all one. If we could get the world to understand that we are all one, we are all one. What we do impacts all of us. Doesn't matter what you believe, what you think, what your heritage is, what your tradition. We all came here to learn to love all of us,
Yep.
no matter who we are. And if we could teach that across the world, we'd probably be in a different place today.
That's it. And one of the things, the ways I've phrased that question for myself is, what if we could remember that in one lifetime or another, in one way or another, we've all been each other's mothers, and we're all going to be each other's mothers again. You know what I mean? And we have that feeling like they're people who show up for us, right? They really show up for us. And I'm not talking, they're not always women. Sometimes they're men. Sometimes they're animals. Sometimes they're even trees. I don't know, a tree that was definitely my mother, who came and just comforted me in a really hard time. And if we could remember that every soul we meet might have been our child, I don't think we'd drop bombs on them. I don't think we'd let them go to bed hungry, right? I don't think we'd put them in factory farms or level forests. I think if we could really, this was, I think, the wisdom of our ancestors. They knew that we all belonged to each other and that we had belonged to each other, we would belong to each other. And it wasn't a question of our ideology or our belief or our nation or our whatever ism of today that we think makes us so special and so different. It was more that how can we just show up for each other in loving ways day after day?
I think that's wonderful. I also remember that shelf behind you. Share with our audience what that bookshelf is all about, because
Well, this bookshelf is just a small snapshot of the room I'm in, Violet, and it's so what I began is, when I was a young mother and I had two kids and I was working full time and my taking care of my mother who had a vascular dementia who was living with us and thinking like I might just be about to go insane. And if I don't I feel like I'm the victim of some like brainwashing experiment because I never get to sleep. I didn't have anyone to call on, right? I didn't know what to do. My grandmothers were dead. I had nothing. But in the dark at night, putting the kids to bed, I found myself calling out to my grandmothers, specific grandmothers. My grandmother Molly, who had raised six children on no money during the Depression. My grandmother Nellie, who was a gardener. My grandfather's mother, who died in childbirth at age 30. All these women I knew tiny little bits of things about. And I began asking them for help. And I mean help, not like, oh, make me a better person or help me, figure out my path in life. I mean, like, when I have to bring the car to the mechanic tomorrow, make it so I can pay the bill. Please, please make it so I don't lose my temper with the kids tomorrow. Please, please, please help my son to one day eat lunch that I pack for him. Really specific things. And the crazy thing was, the amazing thing for me, Violet, was I began to feel these mothers and grandmothers showing up, and they answered my prayers in small ways. These aren't big, sun turning in the sky miracles. These are just ordinary moments of surprising ease that would happen. Oh, the car bill is way less than I thought. Oh, my son came home and said he loves it when I make him a pita bread hummus sandwich. Now that was a miracle. And you know what I mean? Like, and 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 I and I began putting the photographs of all the dead who helped me out on a shelf. And I began saying thank you. And to say thank you, I would give them flowers, or I would often share a little bit of my food with them, or like my mom loved to have her bourbon after dinner, and that became a problem. But, I figured from the other side, I could control how much she drank, so I always gave her good stuff after dinner. And just to say thank you to her. And just as thank you to all the dead. And I experienced all the dead as showing up. And the end result of it, Violet, was I began to feel profoundly mothered and profoundly loved by more beings than I could possibly imagine. And that gave me resources I couldn't imagine. Joy, ease. It didn't make life always easier. Do you know what you know how life goes? Life takes us through some pretty nasty swamps sometimes. But I'd find myself in one of those swamps, and there'd be a couple folks there ready to say, "No, you put your foot here. I'll get you through there so we miss the alligators, all right?" And and I began to feel a sense of such joy, and they felt so real to me, and I love them so much, and I feel so loved by them. And that's what I write about and what I share with others. Like, I write a lot of books. I come from a long line of Irish storytellers. My grandmother kissed the Blarney Stone, so I've got the gift of gab. But all of it boils down to all of your mothers and grandmothers and fathers and uncles and neighbors and friends, your pets on the other side, everyone on the other side remembers you. And everyone without exception loves you, and they're waiting to show up and help you. What the dead remember is that we're all each other's mothers. And the other thing I've begun to pray to the dead about is help me to see with your eyes while I'm still alive. Help me to remember that the person irritating me at the grocery store is also my child. You know what I mean? And this person whose views seem so different than mine that I feel so angry at is also deeply connected to me. And there are ways for us to find connection again. And I've had that experience again and again and again. Can I tell you a funny story? So
Sure.
there's a woman in my town. I've lived in the same little town for 30 years. And there's a woman in my town who is become an unofficial expert on every medical thing that could possibly happen in the world. And whatever new enthusiasm she has, she finds you at the farmer's market or the supermarket, and she'll talk your ear off about it. And I always see her coming with a little bit of dread. You know, I don't need to hear this. But the other day I was at the laundromat because I had a big load of duvets to clean, and I had to go in and use the big industrial washers. And she was there, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be sitting with her. And she sat down, and the next thing I know, of course, she began to talk my ear off. I thought, oh my gosh, what is it with her, like in all this medical research? She's just an ordinary person. And at one point, she looked at me and she said, in my next life, I want to be a doctor. And I looked at her and I said, you'd be a really good doctor. You'd have researched everything. And she said, yeah. She said, I figure nothing's wasted in this life. I'm doing all my studying right now. And in my next life, I'm going to hit the ground running. And I said, oh my gosh, I hope you're reborn in our town and I am too, and you get to be my doctor in my next life. She said, I will be. And it was the strangest conversation, Violet, and it made me fall in love with her. And I realized that I had been seeing a very narrow portrait of this person, but she was living inside a much bigger, more ambitious story. And I could too. And that we're all connected to each other in ways we can't even imagine. And there's somebody who's doing something you think, what are they up to? But if you could see all their lifetimes and everything they're doing, it might make a little more sense. So it was a nice moment for me. Now I see her and I think, hey, it's so good to see you. You know?
I love that because this lifetime's only a small piece of what we go through, and we think this is, it holds all the wisdom. And if we could see, like you said, if we could see everything that everybody has ever done to have an understanding of their pains, their wounds, their joys, their celebrations, wouldn't we have a different perspective on who they are and where they are right in this moment and what's going on with them? Such a
Oh,
cool way.
absolutely. And we all are, if you ever see a little baby, a friend of mine has a newborn, and you look into that newborn's eyes, and, you know, he knows everything still, this little kid, right? Like, you look into this 3-month-old baby and you think like, oh, you know the secrets of the cosmos right now. You're going to forget them, but right now you know them. And we all come in and we have traumas from things from past lives, right? We all carry fears and pains and worries from past lives, but we also carry treasures.
Yep.
And it's really important that we access those treasures. And we're going to carry them forward too.
That's what makes it all so beautiful is, I tell people all the time that those challenges help strengthen us and grow. And just because you're on a spiritual path, I loved how you said earlier, we all get hit over the head or go through something very traumatic. That is part of this experience is you're supposed to have those challenges, those obstacles, those opportunities. But the real reason we're here is how do we walk through them?
Exactly.
How do we
Yeah,
move through them, right?
my daughter is a case in point. She's been sick since she was 16, and she got very, very ill. Her last 2 years of high school, she was mostly bedridden. She got together enough strength to go to college, and she got diagnosed with an incurable genetic condition, and eventually, and it makes her life physically very complicated. And yet, she has summoned from that experience I am so proud of her, such generosity. Do you know what I mean? She writes a lot about, she started writing about the earth and the earth's challenges right now, and weaving together her own experiences of ill health and the earth's experience of ill health right now. And she writes about chronic illness in ways that other people who suffer from it find it incredibly sustaining. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
she really tries to help others and and to use this experience as a way of helping others. I mean, it doesn't mean that she isn't praying and I'm not praying for a miraculous cure every minute of the day, but it also means that we take what we're there's strange things happening all the time that we don't understand. And she once wrote in a book she wrote, she finally said, I think if I hadn't had this illness, I would have wasted most of my 20s being pretty silly. But because I only had a few good hours each day, I had to be really serious about what I wanted to do with my life. And, by the time she's 32, she's already published 3 books.
I think that's
So,
awesome. It's so
so
awesome.
we don't know, we don't know. I mean, one of the questions we often say in our family is, how is this catastrophe, this horrible thing I never ordered off the menu, how is this the answer to my prayer?
We don't always understand the full picture. I think we're not
No,
supposed to, right?
no, 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 right?
Right. It's the mystery of really how the universe works and how it all moves forward and what we learn and how we grow and how we expand, right? A lot of people that have had really tough lives, they're like, I would have really, really should have asked for something easier. Well, if you'd have asked for something easier, would you have really done anything remarkable? I think the challenges really push us to
They
really
do. It's so interesting. I'll give you 2 different examples. One is, people forget about Shakespeare. There's a wonderful movie out about Shakespeare now called Hamnet. It's so beautiful. But it looks about how loss creates his creative energy, right? Like, and the thing was, he wanted to make money. He was a really ambitious guy, and he didn't want to write like the best plays in the whole world. He wanted to make a buck and buy a really big house for his wife and make her feel better after the death of their child. And so he was driven. And sometimes people will say like, "Oh, well, I don't want to, I don't want to have to make money at it." But when you have to make money, sometimes it drives you to do things you wouldn't normally do, right? Like he wrote the greatest plays. And then I look at like a Mozart. he comes in and he's writing all this music, right? And he's such a genius. But we don't know what came before. We don't know what lifetimes he struggled in. Like sometimes I wonder, did he spend like a whole lifetime where nobody would listen to him? Did he spend a whole lifetime where he couldn't sing and all he wanted to do was sing? Did he spend a whole lifetime as a crow wanting to be a nightingale? We don't know how much of that energy builds up and then suddenly,
You
you
get it,
know,
right? Right? You get
yeah, and
that
we don't
freaking.
know. But we all we can do is take what we've got and work with it, right? And try to be generous with it.
Yeah, because we don't know where our lifetimes have driven us to do and
Ah,
what to do. And, I think we still hold a lot of that wisdom. So,
I do
we,
too.
I was in corporate for a long time in business. And, the big discussions around those tables were, are leaders made or do they come in already prepared?
Huh.
And after walking a spiritual path, this is what I believe. I believe leaders have been leaders in many, many lifetimes. It's kind of like an automated video game, and you try this, and this doesn't work in this lifetime. You're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. You come into
Right.
your next lifetime and you try it a little differently, and you're like, okay, that didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. And then we come into another lifetime and we do something, we're like, wow, that worked really, really well. I'm going to keep that in my back pocket because that's a nugget that I've learned. And I think we grow and mature. And as we come into lifetimes, we may not remember the full details of what we've been through, but we have a soul energy that remembers this is a good path. This is a path to avoid. This is a path to reconsider, maybe mold a little differently. And we don't understand where that information is coming from. But
Exactly.
really good leaders, I believe, have been leaders for probably 100, 150 thousands of times
Oh,
that have gotten better and better at it.
we forget that when Jesus came along, and it's right there in the Gospels, all of his disciples are saying, "Who are you? Are you Elijah? Are you Moses?" Like they know that a guy like this doesn't just show up out of the blue. Do you know what I mean? They have a belief, a folk belief in reincarnation still extant, and they were like, "Who are you? Who were you in the last lifetime? Right? Were you Dionysus? You know what I mean? Like you're clearly a big kahuna. You know what I mean? Like." And I think I agree with you 100%. You know, my favorite movie about this all is, Violet? I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. Have you ever seen that?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I I love that movie. And I always think about two details in that movie. One is in the beginning, he's this weatherman condemned to repeat the same awful day over and over again. And in the beginning, he keeps stepping in the same icy mud puddle up to his thigh every morning. And finally, one day, his foot poised above the mud puddle, he steps backwards, like, this time I'm going to remember the mud puddle. And then he stops stepping in it. And I think we all have mud puddles in our souls. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, we got to figure out what they are and stop stepping in them.
I
But
I
then
I think definitely that's what happens to us.
But then the most interesting thing is, he goes on, he's trying all these different things. He tries to be a god, he gets despairing, he tries to kill himself, nothing works. He's just repeating the same day over and over again. He tries to game it all and get love, it doesn't work. Nothing works. And then one day when he exits the same bed and breakfast which he hates yet again, the same woman who's passed him, and some people think like 10,000 times, repeating this day, he follows her. And he discovers she's the town piano teacher. And he walks in and says, "Give me a piano lesson." And she does. And he's terrible, beyond terrible. But the next day he takes a piano lesson, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And then at the end of the movie, you see him, and he's become a jazz virtuoso. And he's ecstatically happy. And he's made friends, he's got community, he's won the love of his life. He's found meaning and purpose, and he wants to keep living in this town and repeating the same day over and over again. He's And I always say to people, it's like this woman who's studying the medicine, like, what's your piano lesson? What's the thing that if you did it today, even if you were no good at it, would set you on the path of joy?
I love that. I love that. And don't you think our ancestors hold so much wisdom that they're also guiding us? Hey, I've done that 10 times. You don't want to do that. Do this instead.
Well, that's why I call in the dead. I figure they got much better eyes and they can see in the dark, and I most certainly can't. And they're going to keep me from stepping in those mud puddles. That's why I call on them every morning. And I also call on them to help me, like, you know, to do my work. Like my grandmother, she raised 6 kids in the Depression. I don't even know how many pregnancies she had. And then she had 36 grandchildren. And you know what I mean? Like her life was just laundry and lunch and cleaning up. And she thought polyester was like the greatest invention known to man because that meant the ironing was simpler. And but it was a lot of hard work in her life. And then in her 80s, she took an oil painting class at the local library. Now she wasn't great. you know, you don't look at her oil paintings and think, my gosh, she's going to be an artist someday. You think, well, okay, she did some paintings. You know, but I have 2 of them in my office, and I love them because they were a vote for joy. And I sometimes like to think of a little girl reborn who already has taken her first art class, who already has begun to think about what she wants to paint next. You know what I mean? Like she's already on the path of joy.
And think about how many people won't even try it because I'm not a painter. I'm not an artist. I can't
Uh,
do that. And your grandmother said, I don't care. I'm going to do this because it makes me so happy and joyful.
well, I'll give you an example for me personally. I'm a terrible singer, Violet. I'm tone deaf. And I'm 64 years old. I've been told I'm tone deaf my whole life. My husband used to tell me, please don't sing out loud next to me, even when we were doing like Christmas carols. He's got a beautiful voice. But I want to come into my next life able to sing. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I start singing now and not being ashamed of singing. No, I'm not a good singer, but that doesn't mean I can't sing and can't love singing, right?
Right. Right.
And who knows, it may take a while. I may need a few lifetimes as, a Carolina Wren before I'm alive, or something where I can get there. But I do love it, and I'd love to be able to sing. So that doesn't mean, I always say every prayer is answered, but not every prayer is answered in a single life.
I love that. I love that. Well, I got your book. So,
Thank you.
and I've read lots of reviews and lots of people's feedback on this beautiful book. I'm sure you're working on something else now because I know you well enough to know that that's who you are. So I can't wait to see what you come up with
Thank
next
you.
in your writing. They're always so inspiring. They always move us so forward in our thoughts and how we think. And so thank you for being a gift to this world.
Oh, thank you, Violet. That's so sweet of you. Well, this book meant a lot to me to do, and it meant a lot to write a book about our ancestral mothers and to help and to accept their guidance. I wish everybody was listening to their ancestral mothers, particularly with all the leaders around the whole world.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a change, right? If we could get that going. I love that
Yeah.
idea and concept. And today we need mothers so much because they really are trying to help us shift how we live and how we think in our world. So
And
I
they
think
want to hear from us too. Like, when my kids call me up, people always say, "Oh, the dead don't want to be bothered." Really? My kids call me for anything, Violet, and I'm thrilled. I don't care if it's, how to make the chicken or, could you help me this month a little bit with rent or, or just can you listen to me complain about something? Whatever it is, their intimacy with me is such a gift. It's all I want. And the dead are no different. They want us to call them up and ask for help.
So share with us a little bit of the things that you offer and a little bit about the books that you've written.
Absolutely. All my books are about collaborating with the other side. My first book, Take Back the Magic, is about how I began working with the dad and how that practice evolved in my life and what it really meant for my relationship with my father, who had been very difficult in life and turned out to be very generous and wonderful from the other side. And it was really a transformative experience. But the whole time I was writing that book, Take Back the Magic, my mother was standing there like, when do I get my book? And so Mothers of Magic is a book about my relationship to my mother and grandmothers and about the deep, deep wisdom and ancestral guidance of those mothers and grandmothers and how our ancestors used to turn to them for help and guidance. You can, if you want to read my next book, you have to come to my Substack because I do publish excerpts from the books I'm working on my Substack. Instead of a writer's group, I really love working with my readers and collaboratively. So in my paid Substack, I have both a free Substack and a paid Substack, and I write for both all the time. And so it has a lot of content. But in my paid Substack, you get to watch a book come into being. And I also offer to my paid subscribers a monthly magic conversation where you can bring your own stories from the other side. I offer a lot of workshops. Those are on my website, takebackthemagic.com, and doing one with the Shift Network about the long story of our souls and how to heal those traumas and recover those treasures. I'll be doing another workshop in the fall through the British group Advaya on working with our ancestral mothers. And I'm always coming up with new things I want to do. So, stay on my newsletters or whatever and find out. And finally, my husband and I offer through the Way of the Rose community lots of free prayer circles for anyone who wants to pray to the mother by any name you want to call her and to pray for the earth. And we do that together.
I love that. I love that. We talked about earlier, I think you're as abundant as I am. Instead of using the word busy, I think we like the word abundant a whole much better.
Can I take that from you? Because when I say that I'm really busy, it sounds like I'm complaining. And I'm not complaining because I really love everything I'm doing. But it's not like I got a lot of free time. So I'm going to start saying I am blessed with a lot of sacred abundance right now.
I love that because once you do that, then you attract more of it in and really what you're aligned with. Because I believe when we say busy, it has a negative tone, like we don't want the work, and we do want the work. We just want all of our work to be very aligned with who we are and where we're going. And I think that creates that alignment.
Well, I mean, and it's like it feels like a gift to me to be able to have this conversation with you today. It's such nourishment for me. And just to be in your presence is so healing and so loving. So thank you so much for all you're doing in the world.
Thank you for coming back on the show. We've had you on here at least twice. So those that were fascinated with this conversation, make sure you go back and check out some of our other conversations. And as you write new books and do new adventures, we'll have you back again because I love to have you on the show.
Well, I'm going to have to write another book so I can come back and see you again.
Absolutely. And those listening, thank you for taking the time to listen on your favorite channels. Please like, comment, and follow us wherever you listen. I love that. I have some listeners that start at the very beginning, episode 1, and they're moving through. I love that as well. Or they jump in wherever they jump in and continue listening. I wish you a sacred and magical week. Thank you for sharing your sacred magic with us today. And thank you for listening. And I hope you have an amazing week. And we'll see you soon on another episode of Sacred Magic.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you love the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.